an original MCM production.
Hello, my name is Ptosha Davis, and I'm your guest host for MATTA's Community Media 2016 election interviews. My guest today is Alderman Ashanti Hamilton, who represents Milwaukee's 1st Aldermanic District. How are you, Ashanti?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
It is a pleasure. So we know that you are the incumbent, and you are currently up for re-election. How long have you been in office?
Been in office 12 years, so it's been 3 terms. So this election is for the 4th term.
Okay. And what are some of the things that you've accomplished or that you're most proud of that have happened over the last 12 years since you've been in office?
Well, it's been a number of things. The list is long,
okay.
Ptosha. But I think one of the greatest accomplishments, I would say, would be the workforce development, the area of workforce development.
Mm-hmm.
You will hear a lot of people talking about the Milwaukee opportunity for restoring employment ordinance. Everybody's calling it the MORE ordinance.
Okay, right.
And
that's the 40%?
Right. So the MORE ordinance changed the participation levels for development companies throughout the city. If they were getting a subsidy from the city, most folks wanted to make sure that there was a community benefits package that was associated with those development deals. Our community benefits package is called the MORE ordinance.
Okay.
So what that encompasses was a number of things. So it required a 40% residency preference program. So that required 40% of the workforce on those jobs, on those projects would be City of Milwaukee residents.
Okay.
It required that 25% of the small businesses, that 25% of the work on that project would be small businesses, minority businesses, emerging businesses. So this small business definition that we have. So 25% of the work was supposed to come from that population. It also had on it a local business enterprise program. So local businesses got a preference on their bidding for the work on those projects.
Okay.
So we kind of wrapped all of those types of things into that community benefits. It had wage standards, so there was a certain amount of wage that was prevailing wage standards that would be on those projects. And so we kind of wrapped that into a program so that folks coming to the city would know what they needed to do in order to get the subsidy from the city.
Okay. I know also that you've done quite a bit of work with some other more grassroots initiatives. I know you have been very instrumental in Be the Change, which is a partnership with Milwaukee Public Schools and the City of Milwaukee. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Another one of the things that I'm very proud of, you know, as much as we talk about young people in the city and talking about the types of things that they need to have available to them in order to help them achieve, one of the things that we identified was that literacy was a basic component of the educational process. So we built this program called Be the Change. We had a number of community partners that were at the table to help with that. MPS came to the table with a vast amount of resources in teachers and administration in order to do it. You were involved in that process.
Yes.
And so what we were trying to do was to create a structure around some of our most challenged students. And we wanted to give them some background in literacy to try to close any type of academic gaps that they had, because reading is a foundational skill for all of your other subjects. We wanted to do a leadership opportunity, give them leadership opportunities, give them an opportunity to actually lead something, to control something, and then give some life skill support. So, and we did all of that within the context of a knowledge of self, a positive approach to who they are,
rites of
and
passage.
their rites of passage, and their contributions to the community. And so, instead of looking at them as a problem, we were looking at them as assets and then giving them the tools that they need in order to have a positive impact on their community. And that is kind of, in a nutshell, what Be the Change is. And there were so many folks and so many schools that were interested in this concept that we've had folks calling from Green Bay, from Madison, you know, to expand on the program.
So I want to talk about another program, and I know that this is something that's really dear to you because it really did start from actually some problems, and you actually took that and fueled it into a program that could actually create change, and that's the Safe Zones Initiative.
Right. So the Safe Zones, you know, it's a concept that's really built off of what we're calling a cure violence model. And you know, there were a number of folks who were trying this across the globe. So in many of the war-torn countries in the Middle East, they were using this type of model in order to, you know, rebuild neighborhoods. And what we did here was identify some of the folks in some of our most challenged neighborhoods that were trying to change their lives around. Empower them to actually reach out to other folks that was in that community that were trying to do the same thing, and build this level of trust, of being able to, on a very grassroots level, empower folks who may have made wrong choices in the past, who are committing themselves to change, a positive change in the future, equip them with the type of training, resources and access that would put them in a position to try to go out into the community and help organize those that weren't going to neighborhood meetings.
Right.
They were not going to, you know, they're not going to the community-based organizations and participating. They're not sending their kids to after-school programs. So how is it that you reach those folks that live in the communities that we serve, and get them involved in a way that's meaningful and impactful for the neighborhood? And so, you know, so we identified about a particular area in Garden Homes neighborhood, identified some people who were leaders in that community. Sean Moore, Khalil Coleman was a part of that group. They identified a number of people that actually live in that area. We employed them for the summer. They organized cleanups. They did a violence interruption, conflict resolution training, and you know, and so we're planning on doing it again this summer. This would be the second year, and they had a dramatic impact on that community, and I think
get some national coverage with
Mother Freeman.
With Mother Freeman.
Yeah, Mother Freeman was like the inspiration behind this, because she had been doing that work in the community for a long time. And you can see how somebody can work in the community for a long time, you know, be very positive, touch a lot of people, and those on the outside not necessarily see what that impact is. And what we did was really kind of shine a light on that work.
On the work she's already been doing.
On the work that she was doing, and then we put a structure around it that would be sustainable and that would give it wings, give it arms, and connect it to something that was bigger than just inspiring people for the moment. What we want to be able to do is to kind of connect them in a real structured way, so that, you know, whether or not they stayed in that comfort zone or not, they know that that structure is there. They know it's there to benefit them and to help them.
How to utilize it.
And then you help them navigate it. And I think that's what the challenge is for us as a community right now, is to have people who always felt disenfranchised and outside of the system. How do you create the type of environment that can bring them back into the system and trust it again?
Right.
And I think that's what, you know, the Safe Zone mission, you know, is.
So I know some of your colleagues are interested in expanding this concept into their districts as well.
Right. Well, that's what we do in the first, right? We demonstrate. We do it first. We do it first, and we do it right. I think it's important to talk about doing it right too, because, you know, whenever you're doing something like this, there's going to be a learning curve.
Right.
You have to be able to work out some of the kinks, and you have to do it in a way where you are demonstrating what the positive impact could be, how you can expand on getting that part right, and then you recognize the things that happen wrong, and then you don't do those anymore.
Or fix
right?
them.
Right, or you fix them. And I think we've been able to do that in the first, and so there are a lot of my other colleagues are saying, we got neighborhoods that are just like that. We got neighborhoods that got the same demographics, got the same disparities. Why don't we lift that model
and do it
in another neighborhood so that we can have those impacts too?
So speaking of neighborhoods, let's talk a little bit about you.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you were born and raised here in Milwaukee,
Yep.
but a lot of people don't know your story.
Yeah.
A lot of people, 12 years, they just know Alderman Hamilton,
Right.
but there was an Ashanti before there was an
Right.
Alderman Hamilton.
Right. It's odd that you would say that because I did kind of grow up telling my story.
One of the first hosts for
Teen Summit.
That's right, Teen Summit right here out of Milwaukee.
Right here, and you know, I've gotten a lot of experience from that. Matthew Johnson was
Strive Media.
From Strive Media was an early mentor of mine. So I grew up in the city of Milwaukee. I went to Victor Berger Elementary School. It's Martin Luther King Elementary now, but you know, it was a neighborhood school at the time. So most of the folks that went there actually lived in that neighborhood. I went to Samuel Morris Middle School. You know, it's the middle school for the gifted and talented and all that.
They named it after you. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, I'm proud of that fact because there are so many people who follow kind of like the same kind of track.
Right.
If you take a look at a lot of the professionals here in the city, you know, you would see where they went to school and so some of the relationships that kind of developed out of that. And then I went to Riverside for high school.
Okay.
And that became, you know, Riverside still is a very strong part of me, right? Then I went to Marquette for college.
Okay.
So I did my undergrad at Marquette. So I'm a Milwaukee son through and through,
okay.
right? And so after that, I taught at Riverside. So I went back to Riverside, I taught at Custer for a little while too. And so after teaching for a few years, then I went to law school at Texas Southern University in Houston, Texas. Worked in the probate court in Houston, Texas for a little while, and then came back home to my own city and serve my own folks. But as I was coming up, you talked about Matthew Johnson and the Strive Media and the Teen Forum thing. You know, so I was part of this first class. Brandy was in the class with me. Wilkes, I think her last name.
There are national people all over the country that came and graduated out of Strive, ABC, NBC, CNN,
They're working in newsrooms, in front of the camera, behind the camera, because you learn this whole idea of the production process through Strive Media. And we're talking TV, radio, print, you know, so you just get this exposure that you just didn't get otherwise.
Else,
you couldn't get that as a high school student anywhere else. But I was also the first Hang Tough kid too. So they had this Hang Tough special at the time, right? And so I was recruited because of the environment that I grew up in. You know, I grew up on the east side of Milwaukee, so they call it EA.
Okay.
You know, so it's East Hour, and I spent a lot of time on the streets of Milwaukee.
Okay.
And not necessarily as a troubled kid. I was just exposed to a lot because just because I didn't have that type of supervision. I was free to do. But what that did do was connect me to a lot of people. And I learned from the experiences of other people. I didn't necessarily have to make the same mistakes that other people made in order to learn from them. And so through that process, one of my coaches at Riverside, Myron Kane, had said that, you know, if it's, you know, they were looking for examples of people who had overcame adversity in their life. And he's like, that's the kid right there that you need to interview. And so they did this interview, and it turned into, you know, this big anti-drug movement that that Hang Tough was doing. And, you know, and the example of how to overcome this stuff, they used,
So you've been in front
story.
of the camera your whole entire life, just about?
For a little while. you know, for a little while. And it got to the point where I just assumed people knew my story.
Right.
And now I began to realize that there were so many people now who have grown up
without
know,
a stride, without a hang
without
tug,
a stride,
without a gumbo.
Without a gumbo, right. You know, without all of those types of things. One of the things that kind of remain constant that I think we don't give enough support to now, that I give a lot of credit to my success to this day, would be the Upward Bound programs, which was a program that in my work, my contribution to the creation of this Be the Change program, a lot of that was borrowed from this Upward Bound,
which is a
model.
program that was at Marquette University for minority students. For
minority students, for first-time college kids, right? So, you know, and that was a academically structured program, and it was really built around giving you academic support during the school year, and then had this cool enrichment summer program where you went on these trips. You know, they exposed you to these types of things that most people growing up in an environment where I was growing up in didn't get exposed to. So we took trips out of state. You know, we went to restaurants that we only dreamed about going to. You know, you went to museums. You know, not the museum downtown Milwaukee, but they would take you to, you know, the Chicago Museum. They'd take you to museums in New York. You know, and take trips to D.C. And,
exposure.
It was exposure. You live on campus on your senior year just to, you know,
acclimate you to that.
Acclimate you to the college life, and ingrained in you that you were going to college when you got out of high school. There was an expectation. There was a comfort level with this experience, and so those types of things are the things that we kind of put into the Be the Change program. And to a large extent, you really didn't have to do a lot with the kids. Only thing you had to do was give them the support that was needed and the exposure that they weren't getting.
And then they took the next step.
And they would take the next step. You know, we have to start believing more in what it is that they can accomplish and what they can do, and stop limiting you know, what their capabilities and possibilities are. Let's just give them, let's just nurture them and give them what they need. They'll blow our socks off on what it is that they can accomplish. So
let's talk a little bit about what it is that you see in the future. What is your vision, not just for the 1st District, but also for Milwaukee?
I think I represent the type of district that they have the expectation of leadership. They understand that they want their representation to have an impact on the city, right? So
because you filled some really big shoes.
I have, and with some intrepidation initially, right? It's very difficult. I wasn't in a position where I was filling the shoes of an incumbent that people didn't like. I was filling the shoes of an incumbent that everybody loved. And
that would have been Marvin Pratt, who was our mayor, interim mayor for a short period of time.
And he was our mayor and garnered a lot of love and support throughout the city because of his run for mayor and because of the type of representation he gave the 1st District when he was there. And I always like to tell people that even he was filling the shoes of a, you know, it was a sense of leadership in the 1st District. So before Marvin, there was Roy Neighbors, who was a pastor of Community Baptist Church for a long time after he served as alderman. And then before Roy Neighbors, it was actually the 2nd African American that was elected to the city council, and the 1st African American male that was elected to the city council after the Honorable Vel Phillips. So, and that was Orville Pitts, you know, and people still remember Orville to this day, and he made a number of other political runs while he was active politically. He made a run for Congress and a number of other higher seats, but garnered a lot of support throughout the city. So that's the lineage of this kind of 1st District representation. And so this is not something that you just pick up the mantle on and then try to be average. You want to lead, right? And so in that leadership kind of role and tradition and legacy of this district, I think all of them had a larger vision for the city. All of them had a larger vision for the Black community in particular, a place where there was a sense of togetherness and common vision with the entire city, and where that could go. And then a sense of competition where we didn't just want to be good, we didn't just want to be a good, fair, solid, city. What we want to be is a leader in the nation. We want to be able to show the nation what it is that communities, and now that we're a majority minority city, what's the level of efficiency and inclusion and diversity and pride that a city can have when you have such a diverse population and you're trying to overcome such staggering disparities. What does that turnaround look like? And how do you know when you've made it to a level where you're functioning as a competitive global city? And you don't get to those places unless you start asking those questions, and then you actually put some goals down, and as a city with a common vision, you start to achieve them. And that's where I want us to be now, is for us to start having a conversation of what is it that we would like to accomplish. We can't have a city that 30% of its population is living below the poverty line, and we don't have an economic development plan that includes those people, not just everybody, but includes those people, and create a pathway for them to get out of poverty, right? So that has to be part of our vision. That has to be part of our goal setting if we're going to move together as a competitive city. Our education plan. We cannot have the educational gaps that exist between the African American community and the rest of society, Hispanics too, but in the rest of our population, without having a defined plan on how we're going to close that educational gap and build some momentum around it and start accomplishing some of those issues. So if we continue to be in a space where we're just arguing about the strategies, creating enemies out of anybody that brings a proposal to the table that you don't like.
Ideologies.
And we allow the ideologies to take over the conversation, and we never get to a point where we're actually servicing the children that we say
people that need it.
That we say need this.
Right.
And we don't have a measurement in place so that we're better this year than we were last year, and we commit to that, then we're going to constantly lose on the educational front. And so it's going to take some courage, and it's going to take some give and take from people in order to kind of build a educational platform and plan that everybody can get behind.
For quality education.
Because we got to have it. You don't become a competitive city and not educate the children that live in your communities.
Well, Alderman Hamilton, we want to thank you for joining us today, and we want to wish you luck, and we want to encourage everyone to go out and vote on April 5th. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
An MCM production.